The cool part is the way that she plays and her range and the level of difficulty on her shots is obviously a very close comparison to the way that I play. It's must-see TV. And I love what it is done for women's basketball in terms of when she shows up, the seats are filled and there's a different energy.
The biggest names in basketball just shattered every unwritten rule to defend one rookie. When Steph Curry publicly declared he was sick of watching Caitlyn getting attacked, it wasn't just another player's compliment. It was a declaration of war against an entire league's silence. LeBron James, Luka Dončić, and half a dozen NBA All-Stars suddenly decided they'd had enough of watching the WNBA's golden goose get brutalized while commissioners counted ticket sales. What happened next exposed the ugly truth about professional basketball's most toxic secret. For months, the soundtrack of women's basketball was the same sickening thud. Caitlin Clark getting hacked, bumped, hip-checked, and hammered while referees swallowed their whistles and league executives pretended everything was normal. The targeting wasn't subtle. Veterans were hunting the rookie who dared to bring attention their sport had begged for decades. Every cheap shot came with the same message: know your place, golden girl. Bans exploded across social media. Sports shows tiptoed around the obvious. The WNBA's response? Crickets. The message was crystal clear: handle it yourself, rookie. But then something unprecedented happened. The most powerful voices in basketball decided they'd watched enough. When Stephen Curry speaks about shooting, people listen. When he breaks down another player's mechanics, careers get made. So when the greatest shooter in NBA history spent 20 minutes dissecting Caitlin Clark's game on national television, every scout, coach, and player paid attention. But Curry didn't stop at technical analysis. He dropped a bombshell that sent shockwaves through both leagues. I'm sick of watching Caitlin getting attacked. If the league doesn't step up and protect her, things are gonna get ugly real fast. Those weren't diplomatic words from a media-trained superstar. That was raw frustration from someone who recognized greatness being destroyed by jealousy. Curry had studied Clark's tape frame by frame. He'd broken down her release time, found it identical to his own, and watched her confidence never waver despite constant physical punishment. The technical breakdown that followed was surgical. Identical release speed, limitless range, identical showmanship. Then came the uppercut. She's the total package. Remember, Curry's endorsement isn't casual praise. His blessing turned Klay Thompson into a legend and Jordan Poole into a millionaire. Declaring Clark a kindred spirit was nothing short of legacy anointment from the man who revolutionized basketball geometry. But Curry wasn't alone. LeBron James, the king of calculated public statements, chose his words carefully when asked about Clark's impact. Instead of safe corporate speak, he zoomed out to the macro view that revealed everything. She's bringing eyeballs. They flew private for the first time. Celebrate that. The translation hit like a freight train. Clark isn't just playing basketball, she's accelerating structural progress 27 years in the making. LeBron's seen this movie before. He was the movie in 2003. He knows what it's like to drag an entire industry into a richer tomorrow, and his respect sounded personal, almost protective. You could hear the subtext in every word. Don't mess this up, league. Protect your investment. This was the voice of experience warning about squandering generational talent. The floodgates opened. Pascal Siakam, normally reserved and diplomatic, broke every unwritten rule on live television. Asked about which players get the most love right now, Siakam swerved past dozens of NBA names and dropped a nuclear bomb. Honestly, it's Caitlin Clark. The love around her is ridiculous. He didn't compare her to WNBA rookies. He measured her against Tyrese Haliburton, his own all-star teammate, and still handed her the crown. Tyrese Haliburton went even further. Living in Indianapolis, he had a front-row seat to the circus orbiting Clark. He watched the autograph vultures, the camera flashes, the non-stop scrutiny, and her stone-faced composure through it all. His assessment was brutal in its honesty. She's probably top 5 most famous people that are playing right now, just in general. That includes our league as well. The statement hit different because Haliburton understands superstar pressure. He's carried franchise expectations as an NBA cornerstone, yet even he thinks Clark's carrying the heavier backpack. When someone who's lived under that microscope says you're dealing with something unprecedented, that perspective cuts deeper than any highlight reel. Luka Dončić, never one for wasted words, delivered the most economical praise possible. When asked about his favorite women's player, his response was instant: Caitlin Clark. No disclaimers, no hedging, no political correctness. For Luka, whose own leap from European wonder kid to NBA superstar rewrote development curves, that economy of words meant everything. He graded her on the hardest scale possible, professional impact right now, and she aced it. But the most telling endorsements came from unexpected places. Obi Toppin, built more for dunks than dissertations, couldn't contain his respect. Caitlin's amazing. Seeing her courtside at our games is awesome. We cheer for her the same way she cheers for us. That's parity in its purest form. No hierarchy, no separate leagues, just hoopers recognizing hoopers. Yet not everyone joined the love fest. Jason Tatum's response to questions about his favorite WNBA player was ice-cold calculation. Asia Wilson. 7 syllables that felt like a deliberate snub. Kevin Durant's answer when asked about his favorite female athlete was equally pointed. Angel Reese. Talented players both, but given Clark's record-shattering season, these selections read like subtweets in human form. The resistance revealed everything Paul George had predicted weeks earlier. Asked about the targeting Clark faced, George delivered uncomfortable honesty. Veterans spent years grinding in empty gyms. Suddenly, a rookie rolls in and becomes the face. Some people will feel a way about that. He wasn't condoning cheap shots, but explaining the human psychology baked into rapid change. The numbers told the real story. Games moved to NBA arenas and still sold out. Television ratings punched 400% above the previous season. Merchandise flew so fast, Nike couldn't keep Iowa Gold on shelves. Charter flights got approved mid-season because the optics of a generational athlete waiting in TSA lines were too absurd for 2024. Corporate sponsors flooded in like never before. The WNBA, which had begged for mainstream attention for decades, suddenly found itself managing a tsunami of interest centered around one 22-year-old with unlimited range. The curve wasn't just steep, it was vertical. But with unprecedented attention came unprecedented danger. Recent reports revealed the Dark's meteoric rise. A stalker was arrested for sending graphic messages highlighting security concerns nobody anticipated. The WNBA commissioner finally broke her silence on the targeting controversy, but her words felt hollow after months of inaction. The league found itself walking a tightrope. How do you capitalize on a single player's magnetism without cannibalizing your entire ecosystem? How do you protect your golden goose while maintaining competitive integrity? The NBA learned this lesson during peak LeBron fatigue in 2011. The WNBA had a real-time case study in managing generational talent. Christine Brennan, the veteran sports journalist, didn't mince words about the league's handling of controversies surrounding Clark. Her criticism of Commissioner Kathy Engelbert's response to various incidents sparked fresh debate about whether the WNBA was doing enough to protect its biggest draw. The attacks continued, but something fundamental had shifted. When the biggest names in basketball publicly draw lines in the sand, consequences follow. Referees started noticing flagrant contact they'd previously ignored. Media coverage intensified around every questionable call. The spotlight that Clark brought to women's basketball was now illuminating every dark corner of the league's culture. What emerged wasn't just about one player or one season. This was about the collision between old guard gatekeeping and unstoppable talent. Clark hadn't just broken records. She'd broken the invisible barrier separating the NBA and WNBA in the public consciousness. When Pascal Siakam ranks her above his all-star teammate, when LeBron calls for celebration instead of resentment, when Steph Curry threatens consequences for continued attacks, the message is unmistakable. She's crossed over. The resistance from some quarters only proved the revolution's authenticity. Greatness never breeds neutrality. It splits rooms into devotion and defiance. Ask Jordan about Detroit's Jordan rules. Ask Serena about the hatred she faced. Ask Tiger about the whispers that followed his dominance. The WNBA had begged for urgent discourse for years. Clark kicked down the door and served it on a platinum platter. Every cheer and every cheap shot proved the same thesis. Indifference was dead. The league could fix officiating, marketing budgets, and revenue sharing. What it couldn't manufacture was passion, and Clark had generated enough overnight to power a small city. The NBA stars who defended her weren't just supporting a talented rookie, they were recognizing a cultural earthquake. Here's what the numbers really revealed. Clark wasn't just participating in the WNBA, she was resetting its gravitational center. Television executives fought over broadcast rights. Arena managers scrambled to accommodate unprecedented demand. Charter flight companies added WNBA routes to their schedules. The infrastructure of women's professional basketball was being rebuilt around one player's magnetic pull. The comparisons to Steph Curry were flattering but incomplete. Clark's ceiling isn't becoming the women's Steph, it's becoming the first ever Caitlin Clark. A hybrid of Curry's shooting gravity, Magic Johnson's passing flair, and Patrick Mahomes' cultural spark. NBA stars sensed this immediately. Some cheered, others bristled, but nobody could ignore it. That's evolution in motion, wearing sneakers and shooting from the logo. The The silence that protected mediocrity for decades was shattered by crossover recognition that transcended league boundaries. The stalking incident added a sinister element nobody anticipated. When fame reaches certain altitudes, it attracts dangerous attention. The league's security protocols, designed for a sport that played in half-empty arenas, suddenly needed upgrades for someone who filled NBA venues. Protection became about more than flagrant fouls and cheap shots. Commissioner Engelbert's belated response to the controversy felt reactive rather than proactive. Critics argued the league had prioritized ticket sales over player safety, allowing targeting to continue until external pressure became unbearable. The NBA star's intervention had forced action the league should have taken months earlier. What happens next will define more than Clark's career. It will determine whether the WNBA capitalizes on its biggest opportunity or squanders generational talent through institutional negligence. The charter flights are nice, but systemic change requires more than upgraded travel arrangements. It requires cultural evolution from the top down. The resistance from some NBA players like Tatum and Durant wasn't necessarily personal, it was institutional. Acknowledging Clark's transcendence meant admitting the artificial barriers between leagues were crumbling. Not everyone was ready for that new reality, but the tide had already turned. Pascal Siakam admitted the love, Obi Toppin felt the joy, Tyrese Halliburton saw the humanity, LeBron saluted the shift, Trae Young offered the competitive smoke, Luka certified the professional resume, Steph Curry drew the line in neon paint and dared anyone to cross it. The revolution was already complete. A 22-year-old with a 38-second release had accomplished what decades of marketing campaigns couldn't. She'd made the basketball world pay attention. The NBA stars who defended her weren't creating a movement. They were acknowledging one that had already reshaped the landscape. The silence is over, the pressure is permanent, and professional basketball's future now orbits around a rookie who turned critics into believers and skeptics into supporters, one impossible shot at a time. The WNBA wanted a spark to ignite mainstream interest. Instead, they got a wildfire so bright even the NBA's biggest stars couldn't look away. This wasn't about protecting one player anymore. This was about protecting a transformation that would define basketball's